Bill, you still there?
I think that's it.
Bill dropped out.
Bill dropped out. Yeah, well, I think, as I say, that's why it's very important when you have this to do an estate planning portfolio where you have copies of the life insurance policies in the portfolio. Because if you don't, then things like that could possibly happen. Now, of course, I've been involved in practicing law for 35 years. One of the things that I've learned is that, you know, there's many a slip between the cup and the lip, especially with life insurance policies. Oftentimes, life insurance policies, people forget to make payments, so they don't make payments after the kids grow up, and so forth. So that presents a problem. One of the things, though, that you want to think about, especially in hard times like we're in, is the idea that even term policies have value. And sometimes you can get vatical settlements or other types of settlements that for those life insurance policies that they may be worth current money. Even though you may still be alive, you may be able to sell that policy or sell the right to the policy to someone else. So
there's companies that actually do this, even publicly traded companies.
Right. So it is possible. You should not ever just not pay a life, especially if you're an older person, let such a policy lapse, because there is value there. Sometimes in this economy, we have to be looking for value in different things which we didn't ever think about too much before. So that's an important issue as well. Another thing that's which is always causing problems with estates is timeshares. Timeshares are very interesting because while a timeshare has value in some respects.
I got a timeshare in Florida. I'll sell you. Will you buy it?
Yeah, there you go. See, that's true. I have several myself. But timeshares are a valuable asset. It's very interesting about them because obviously they're a great place for vacations. But for seniors, they become, if nothing happens, a liability because all of a sudden they turn into a liability since they keep requiring you to pay a certain amount of money each month.
You have to pay upkeep on those?
On upkeep, right. So it is very important.
How do you sell them? How do you sell out of a timeshare?
Well, to sell a timeshare is like selling other types of real estate. There are brokerage companies that will buy them, but you're not going to make a lot of money on those things.
I bet now would be a good time to buy one.
Oh, I think anytime. I think anytime's a good time to buy. You should never buy a new timeshare. You always buy a used timeshare. They're usually worth a lot more. But
I just went down to
or a lot less.
I just went down to Mexico 2 months ago, and they had people popping out of vans trying to sell me timeshares.
That's right.
I come into the airport and I say I want a taxi to my hotel, which is 10 miles away, and they're like, "Okay, come here and talk to this guy," you know. And next thing I know, he's trying to sell me a timeshare. Anyways, we'll be back in just a second. 888-401-5464, Money Confidential. Welcome back to Money Confidential. I have legal expert Joe Daring on, and we've had some great questions today about taxes and about estate planning. And do you know that one fellow, Bill, he called in with a good question because when, you know, being in the money business, I've seen where, you know, usually the husband dies or the second parent dies and everything just kind of goes haywire because, everyone thinks they've had the best plans, but there's always something that they don't count for. And this is what you do for a living, isn't it?
Right. Well, you know, I've had a personal experience with that. My first wife passed away. And
that's unfortunate.
One of the things that came about in relation to life insurance products is that as a lawyer, we recognize that the breadwinner should have insurance because obviously if the breadwinner is out, that's a difficult thing. But sometimes we forget about our spouses. And if a spouse passes away, that's a very traumatic experience and it really takes you out of the game for probably 6 months to even a year before you really get over that. And you can't really function at a pace that you would be before. And so as a result of that, I always advise people to get some insurance for your spouse. So you both have something because there's always a lot of expenses relating to any tragedy
get you
like
through
that.
some time
Difficult.
to get through it emotionally.
Yes, that's correct.
We have a phone call, Joe, from Phil. Phil, how are you doing?
Hi, fine, thank you.
Hey, Phil, what's going on?
Well, I had this investment that I was working with last year through Bank of America.
Okay.
I had about $100,000 in my account,
Okay.
and I decided it was time to cash in.
All right.
And I was actually out of the country at the time. I'd been out there doing some work for a few months. And what I did was, in an email, I contacted my broker, and I told him I wanted to sell all my shares. Mm-hmm. When I got back, I come to find out that he hadn't actually made the transaction. And when he did finally get around to doing it, I ended up losing about 60 grand.
Well,
So my question is, what can I do to try and get that money back?
sue him.
Well, we have an expert in our office. Timur is his name, so he probably could tell you about mediation and arbitrations with stocks. Phil, this was this with the bank, or was this with the BANC of America? Was it their stock arm, or was it their regular banking arm where this transaction?
No, it was the stock arm.
So that was
BANC.
actually was securities. So it seems to me that we should be, or you would think that you might be able to arbitrate that claim.
Yeah. When you have a disagreement with a person who's in the stock business, thank God I've never had one. Knock on wood. I hope I never do. It goes to arbitration. It doesn't go to a full-blown lawsuit most of the time.
Yeah, that's correct, and it's a lot less expensive and should be a lot easier to take care of.
So what are you going to do
Am
about
I
it,
going to
Phil?
have to pay for that?
What's that?
Will I have to pay for the arbitration?
Does he have to pay an attorney for an arbitration in a securities suit?
Yes, I think you do.
They'll either take you'll either pay a fee or they'll take part of the profits recovered. Is that right?
Or on a contingency fee basis.
Okay. So have you made up
I think
your?
that answered my question.
All right. Thanks for calling in, Phil.
Hey,
That's a good question. You know, I see that a lot where a person calls into a financial place and they say, "Sell my securities," and you know, there's some miscommunication, and the person on the other end doesn't do the sale. I saw this recently. I had a client who bought some palladium at some commodity house, and he lost half his money. And I told this place to, you need to sell this client's asset. I faxed in a form that said, you need to sell it. So I check in a week later, they hadn't done it. And I don't think the account had gone up or down much in value, so it wasn't a deal, but much of an issue. But when the markets are falling precipitously, like they have been, these guys need to be listening to their clients and executing the trades just like their clients have told them, no matter how they get the information. If they get an email and they're not allowed to take emails, they need to pick up the phone and call the client, or if it's a letter, or however.
I noticed that with some of these things, they have, if you leave a voice message, they say they won't execute a transaction by a voice message because of that very issue. The problem comes up that in twofold. There's no question that if they have a communication to then that they're supposed to sell it and they don't sell it, that's a problem. But the issue sometimes comes up is, well, how was this communicated? This guy was out of the country, and did they actually get the communication? So it's a communication issue rather than anything else. But there's no question that if there's an order, especially in this rapidly falling market, they must execute on it immediately.